Dearest warrior sages, I have a wonderful friend I want to introduce to you, Gary Malkin. Gary is a seasoned lifetime composer, a healer using his music. He has um, done such great work in so many realms, so many dimensions. Gary, I'm going to ask you to share some of the great achievements you've made. I know you're a very humble man, but please go ahead and do so. And Gary and I have struck up such a wonderful, joyful friendship. Every time we see each other, there's just such great heart connection, passion, joy. We just feel like exuberant young fellows sharing about life and experience and expression. So I'm so grateful for you to be here today, Gary. And this is our Warrior Sage circle of warrior sages, all committed to having better lives, making better impact, cultivating the warrior and the sage within ourselves. So thanks for
Beautiful.
being here, brother.
Oh my God, Satyen, I am so honored to be on this call with you. I consider you one of my most um, uh, illuminated mentors. So I'm so grateful to be on this call with you today.
Thank you, Gary. Gary, for all of us warrior sages, please share a little about who you are, what your passions are. It's a big one. Who you are, what your passions are, and what you're up to in life.
Oh my God. Well, so my world started when I was 5 years old and I touched the piano and I could play a melody and harmony instantly, and nobody knew how that happened. And we can go more into that later, but essentially, it was that moment that I literally felt like it was coming. The first 5 years were being like underwater, and when I touched the piano, it was like my soul understood that language more than the abuse and cruelty and English language that was forced to grow up in, like we all are, to acclimate. But music was the language that I understood, and my soul really been nourished by. And what it did was, it led me down a path where I was wearing my emotions on my sleeve constantly, which was not easy as a little boy. But I always had the soundtrack accompanying my life's journey. So I've always looked at my life through the lens of what emotion is brought forth with music. So the way it has manifested is in the first 25 years of my career, I was a film and TV and commercial composer. And I had the largest music production company in the Bay Area for about 20 years. And of course, like everything, uh, I had a major accident. And at the same summer, my wife chose to leave the marriage. And like I had this summer of Job, and it was a death because I was one of those people that would never have left. And it really literally catapulted me into a period of not knowing if I'd ever play the piano again. And I had to heal for a year, all the parts of me that were broken. And out of this book that I read called The Call, Greg Lavoie's book, The Calling, it was just a book where I was always so proud of the fact that I was living my dream. But the truth is, my dream, in alignment with my purpose, was making the world a better place. And there's a lot of lubrication needed. If you're the tin man, there's a lot of creaky places on this earth. And suddenly I realized that the gift that I had was in using music as a design factor that would awaken and disarm the monopoly that the linear rational mind had over problems in the culture, from how we're born to how we die, to how we rejuvenate as caregivers, to even how we meditate as a neck up experience rather than a fully heart embodied. So I started to look at everything started to look like a design challenge for a musical solution to ameliorate and emulsify the calcifications in our culture that had things locked. And that's where Wisdom of the World was born, initially out of this groundbreaking work that my creative partner and I created, the work that really focused first on death and the denial of death and the avoidance of illness and the avoidance of grief. And I still feel to this day, we could spend a whole hour
Yes.
on just that area, and what it would reveal is transformations in the world and on an individual level beyond our wildest dreams. I mean, that area has riches to open up to and accept death as the mother of all life, has unbelievable transformational capacities. So
Beautiful.
that's what. So that work got into. That was the work that brought me into. It's called Graceful Passages, and it brought me into the recognition that music could provide a profound gift to a lot of the areas in life that were really stuck.
Beautiful, Gary. You know, in your shares, and I've had the privilege of experiencing, it's beyond mad, it's beyond music. This is like wizardry. You are creating multi-dimensional patterns and feelings and emotions and vibrations that are totally uplifting physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You know, can you tell us the depth of where you go with music and how did you come to this multi-dimensional understanding and expression of it?
You know, the first thought that comes to mind, Satyen, was, you know, here I was playing piano at 5 without having learned. And so I had to learn how to learn, right? Because I was instantly playing. And I started composing music at 8. I wanted to be Leonard Bernstein and Aaron Copland. Those were my two heroes. And one day when I was 11, I was homesick with a little fever. And I was sitting and watching the $1 Million Movie, which is the movie that, you know, like those days there were like, you know, 5 channels on, and this was the public television. And they were playing this one movie every morning at 9 a.m., right? So I was homesick from school, and it was The Miracle Worker. And it was this classic film about the story of Helen Keller. And, you know, like most 11-year-olds, when did we ever think about anybody other than ourselves, right? And suddenly I was brought into the world of what it was like to be completely out of touch with reality, where you couldn't hear, you couldn't talk, you couldn't speak. And the music and the score, and there was this one point that's very famous as a part of film history. It's called the water pump scene. And it's, so for the first third or half of the movie, you're suffering with Helen and the family. They thought she was mentally ill, and of course, you know, all these things. But the breakthrough happened when Annie Sullivan, the teacher that was trying to help her, finally got her to speak in sign language. And it was a breakthrough, right? Yeah. And both the reality of that moment in the film as it was portrayed in such artfulness, where early on, there was this high string note, very quiet, that because I had been studying music all my life, I was attuned, it was supposed to slip under your consciousness, where you weren't supposed to know it was there. But I immediately went, something's about to happen. You know, I was very tuned into that. Yes. And on some level, I tracked the multiple dimensions of Helen Keller's story, the manipulator of the film composer weaving his way into my heart, and the metaphor of how cut off I felt as a young boy, kind of an odd young boy, really wearing my heart on my sleeve, having not fitting into either the boy or girl category. I was so emotional that I felt like I related to Helen Keller. And I suddenly, this music swept you up into the breakthrough. And I literally had this, I just couldn't stop sobbing. And I honestly believe that the birth of compassion in this being was born. And my mother walked in, what's wrong? And I couldn't say anything. But what I knew in that moment was, I went, I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to write music that will crack people's hearts open and make them feel more connected to empathy, compassion, and that interdependent connection to all life, which is what I felt when I was sobbing. And suddenly, oh my God, the suffering of Helen Keller, my suffering, all people's suffering, it just cracked me open. And I was hooked. I wanted to be a film composer. So the answer, it's a long answer to the short question, which is, it's always about what music is, which is the universal language of emotion. And so I drop into a feeling state, and that's when the colors and the notes and the harmonies and the when I'm scoring like Thrive, the recent film I just scored, I'm feeling what is the emotion that needs to be felt right now that will enable people to hear not just with their minds, but their hearts and souls and bodies as well. And I just go to this place like an empath and go, what's missing right now? There's a lot of blah, blah. What do we need? We need people to care. We need people to feel. We need to recognize the stakes of the planet's success and the species of life itself, you know. I mean, not species, but life itself, the drama that we're in right now. So that's what drives me. It's always been this big heart of mine that just feels very deeply and wants to translate it into music all the time.
That's beautiful, Gary. When I'm listening to you, there's a principle of influence and energetic, if you will, evocation that I had learned in studying martial arts. And as a teacher, you have to create a sing song in the class. And the sing song is between depth, meaning, you know, when we walk into a cathedral or a temple or a church, there's a deep feeling of depth and resonance, as opposed to energy, which would be like a discotheque or a fun dance party or whatever. But just to keep it in the energetic realm, the depth people will start to fall asleep. If you just keep it in the depth realm, then the energetic people will fall asleep. And so we had learned to have the artistry to happen between the sing song of depth and energy. And I see that you doing that in every single moment. You bring us into depth, you bring us into energy, evocation, light, and then you draw us in. And I know you've been doing that also with this amazing new movie that's out, Thrive, and you just mentioned the score regarding that. And you know, we're in very unique times on this planet. The Thrive movie has come out. I'd love you to share about that. And how did you create the movie? I'd love to hear your energetics around that.
Well, the score, not the movie itself,
The
right?
score.
Yeah. So I it's kind of remarkable how I got the gig originally, because I did the first score for Thrive, which came out in 2011. Foster and Kimberly Gamble are the creators of the movie, and they heard me at an investor party of some tech company in 2009 singing a song that I wrote that is my signature song, because I never made a living from a song of being a songwriter, but I write songs. I'm working on a Broadway musical right now about birth and life and bonding. So my signature song is a song called "Do You Remember Who You Are," and it's I wrote it for my sister who was going through brain cancer and ultimately died over a 14-month period. But I sang this song, and Foster had no idea I was a film composer with Emmy Awards and all this. He just heard the depth of the song and said, he's going to score that film. Now, do you have any idea how ridiculous that is? That he didn't even know I was a film composer. And I could have been a songwriter from Adam. And ultimately we met, and then he found out, oh my God, now I know. And he saw my vast experience and all that. So that film ended up being heard by 90 million plus people in 27 languages. And it's been, out there for the last 9 years. And when this new film sequel that they never really planned on making really became clear that they had to reveal and share the innovations that are out there based on understandings of the quantum unified field in energy, in medicine, in governance, in consciousness. They became a magnet of people all over the world that came out from the underground and said, we're being suppressed by the oil-based carbon industries. We're being suppressed by allopathic American Medical Association. We're being suppressed by different forms of governance and different forms of organizing ourselves. And they all went to Foster and Kimberly, and literally they contacted 1,000 people. And out of all of those, there were maybe about 70 that they wanted to find a way to fund. I was one of them, actually. It was using music as a way to unravel the monopoly of the linear rational mind in all these fields, leadership, health, etc. And he said to me, I said, Gary, I wasn't going to hire you again for the second film, not because I didn't love what you did, because we thought we need somebody new. But when I thought about it, I'm touting my horn, of course, right now, but it was really powerful for me. He said, I don't know of any other composer that has stayed in the art of film scoring and also used music as a way to transform consciousness and healthcare and which is what I've spent the last 20 years doing. So this movie has been a serious challenge because I had to create it with my music partner of 25 years, Dan Alvarez, during COVID. I had to, it was, oh my God, Satyen. But I had to be the change I wanted to see. I had to embody the emotional energy of the field, which is a lot about stillness, coherence, toroidal flow. It required me to grab a hold of myself at a level that I have never had the discipline to do. So I just knew that the score wouldn't work if I wasn't meditating every day and sleeping 7 hours and exercising every day and eating really well. And because I'd noticed instant feedback, I had such a massive amount of work to do and under unspeakably difficult conditions remotely that I went, this is one of those moments where failure is not an option and you've got to show yourself what you're made of. And I went so beyond anything I ever thought I was capable of that it honestly strengthened something in me, Satyen, that it feels unshakable. It's like the butterfly has emerged. Something happened out of this movie. So I'm telling you more of my personal share rather than about how the movie score was made. But that's a little bit an answer to your question.
That's, you know, I'd love to. I know you have some stuff queued up for us if you're willing to share. But before we go into that, you know, you mentioned, you know, what an amazing accomplishment to be awarded an Emmy, and I don't know much about that. Would you be kind enough to share about that? That's
Emmy Awards, yeah. So I was having that kind of childhood. Yeah. I was born with, I was raised with a deep-seated insecurity that I was never enough.
Okay.
And my whole value was wrapped into my talent. And I leaned on it entirely. And I was looking for fame and fortune as my identity for value, right? So I had like ambition with a vengeance. When I was, I had my first feature film with MGM Films when I was, when I was 30 years old, scoring a major motion picture with Nastasy Kinski and John Savage. And anyway, it was a big score and an orchestra in Rome. And I met Fellini for drinks, and I had dinner with Robert Mitchum and got stoned with Keith Carradine. And it was a heady experience, you know. And so I was very wrapped up in having to be successful financially and profile-wise. And I went on that journey from 1980 to 2000. 1998 was my accident. So during that time I did, in fact, the TV series that I did in 87 had a 15-year run called Unsolved Mysteries. And now it's trending. The theme me and my former partner and I wrote is now basically the theme for the Netflix trended #1 this last summer. So it's like, I'm a part of these. So it's so long in this business that I'm now the cult hits are starting to come back and show themselves. So there was it was like an 18-year period from 1980 to 1998 or 2000 when I had the accident in 98, where I just, I lost 2 marriages and focused on work as the only thing for my raison d'etre, And it was the accident that was the divine intervention that gave me, the gift in strange packages.
Yes, yes.
So I did TV shows that had Emmys, and I had different other projects that got awarded. And I had 7 consecutive years of being one of the 5 composers in the world that had more music on the ASCAP royalty system planetarily than anyone else on the planet. And that was the award for quantity, not quality, mind you.
So, it's interesting is, you're living through the airwaves, you're living in the world way beyond, when these bodies pass away, your art, your offering, the way you're touching lives is here for all of us for generations to come. And that's, I think, one of the main, it's one of the powers. I'm not a musician. I enjoy music tremendously, deeply, fully. I consider musicians of your caliber just magicians, wizards. For me to be able to see what you do and how it's created just blows my mind. That you're able to coordinate all that and have it live forever. It lives forever.
I know,
right? That vibration.
Yeah. No, and it's so funny. I'm launching my new website right now, And I have, as a boomer, I've been very slow in getting my stuff up on the digital sphere, on Spotify and all that. And I'm starting to look at all of the body of my work in the last 20 years that's associated with consciousness shifting and health and wellness and life transition support, which is what my life has been about the last 20 years. And I've been a creator, but I've been a terrible marketer and steward of the work. So now I'm starting to look at, it's only been since Thrive was completed that I looked at everything that this being called Gary has created with
Yes.
a distance that went, who are you to judge its value that doesn't seem like it deserves to be out there in the world? Turns out a lot of this stuff has incredible value, and I've just been using that old vestige of self-deprecation to kind of not honor it, you know. So now I'm bringing it all online and categorizing it and naming it and describing it, and it's almost like as if I know I'm going to disappear one day, probably, like we all will, and I'm somehow really intimately aware that, like what Agnes DeMille said in that famous quote, ours is not to, it's not our business to judge what we create. It's just that we stay connected to the source that helps us be the portal for creation.
Mm,
So yeah, it's an exciting time for me.
beautiful.
Lovely, lovely time.
Well, that's perfect note to, would you be kind enough to share with us some of your magic?
So I'm torn because there's one 5 minute piece. That's 5 minutes is a lot for an interview. That's a long time. But it's the piece that I don't know if it was the one I played you or not, that it was about imagining the future of the world, you know, like as a
Yes.
positive future. Was that the one I played you? I
You know, I,
forget.
I can't recall, but you know, I'm fine. I think 5 minutes is fine. You know, all of us can sit back and do meditation, but
Yeah.
whatever you feel.
So the other thing that I want you guys to be aware of is that I have been in a love affair with scoring spoken word, because we've lost, many of us have, because of this
Ah,
tendency for people to live from the neck up, and it's like the analogy is that if our topsoil in America has only 50% of the nutrients, similarly our ability to pay attention with our heart and soul and body equally with our mind has been undermined. And this modality that I developed with spoken word and music is, it's a restorative tool to listening more holistically. So I might I think what I'll do is just give you the link to that so people can check it out, because
yes,
right now I'm finding that it's not the music that is transformative. It's the energy that went into the creation. That it's the reason why indigenous people do the drum and chant during plant medicine journeys. Music is a carrier of
yes,
intention, and it's a
yes,
carrier of anchoring soul, soul gravitas, right?
yes.
So this piece was the last 5 minutes of the film, and the hardest piece for me to conceive of, because while the world's going to hell in a handbasket, I had to write a piece of music that was like the wrap up. Foster and Kimberly was saying, we are made to thrive and the future is, it's possible, but that's our greatest enemy. Is all of us are so entrained to thinking that the way it is the way it has to be, that we can't imagine a positive future. And so I had to go past my limitations and write a piece of music that would get you excited about the future, right? And somehow when I took the words away, which is what it was written for on the film, if I want to invite people when you're listening to this to just literally just like close your eyes, there's nothing to see, and imagine what a positive future feels like for you, and just let this piece of music be a enhancement tool for that imagining,
Beautiful.
which we all know thoughts are things, right? So the moment it begins.
So
So
where
all
you
right,
Adrian, let's sit back and relax and receive this as an activation and an intention for
exactly.
today. Yes.
What a privilege to share it. I have
Oh,
never shared this piece online as a separate piece. It's only available as a piece under dialogue. But here we go. So this is a kind of a world premiere on the Zoom. Let me just go here. Bear with me. Sorry. Science of where is it? Thrive. Thought I was ready. Bear with me.
Take your time. It's all good.
Okay, all right. This is a good chance to just drop in. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Don't forget to use your breath. Just drop into imagining. So just hold that experience, because it's the moment that things end that is like the analogy of the water's edge meeting the land. The moment music ends is the greatest opportunity to digest the message the music held. And in these times, what you focus on grows. And what I notice is when I listen to that, it is such a great antidote to the negativity that's going on in America and in the world today. Just imagine and anchor a wildly inspirational, beautiful, positive future for humanity and for life. Okay. What was their experience, Satyen?
That's epic. Friends, I don't know if you found that, how you found that, but for myself, that's epic. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat box, whatever experience, how that touched you, we can share it with Gary. But just profound. I'm actually like, more, please, more. And we have time. So if you're open to putting something else on, this
Oh
is,
no, I'd love to play. I have one more thing that's an example of the words and music thing that I love. It's
yeah,
sort of the opposite on the intimacy level.
I
But
would love that.
but you know, I didn't know that I wrote it for the film. And
Yes.
I just took it away from, because I'm going to release the soundtrack album for Thrive on their Thrive site as well as my site. But I'm noticing that I like getting excited about the future as an antidote to what's going on right now. I'm so sickened by what the current president is doing right now in America as such an example of what it looks like to come from a place that isn't.
That's what I found with this. The expansion, it's more than expansion. It's like expanding intent of openness, possibility. This is what we are. We are creators. That's
Right.
what arose in me. We are creators. We're not just beings being pushed around. We actually have the power of creation, the power of alignment, the power of unity, the power of utopia. Really, that's
Exactly.
what I felt in this.
You know, and one of the things I love is as Jonathan, what's his name? He used to be at the University of Virginia. He came up with the elevation theory, and he tested, as only scientists can, the metabolic system when being touched, moved, and inspired to awe, tears, chills. When you transcend the egoic mind into a total experience of beyond the linear mind into an experience of awe, right? And he tested the metabolism and the bloodstream and the organs and the blood and everything. And we were at his optimal state when we were most inspired, which was a phenomenal recognition, because I include this in all my keynotes. So it's actually proved that you extend years to your life when you actually have what I call your minimum daily requirement of vitamin I, my vitamin inspiration every day. And so music is a fabulous way for you to really be aware of what are you listening and what are you watching, and that phrase garbage in, garbage out. How are we messy with being rubbernecking and watching the news when we don't need to? And how can we use music to light us up with that kind of excitement, you know? And so I've become very aware of how important that is. So on the other end of the spectrum is that, you know, that phrase, we're only as effective as our slowest part.
Yes.
So that's the same for a company on a systemic level as it is on an individual. So this one I'm about to play you is this gorgeously intimate, kind of the opposite side of what I just played,
Yes.
that explores our capacity for being extremely tender with ourselves. And for me, healing only happens with tenderness and in the slow lane. So I've been working with this phenomenal thought leader named Sarah McCrum. And I've been working with spoken word very specifically, since Graceful Passages came out, which is that work that's touched over 1 million people in recontextualizing death as a part of the cycle of life. But then I got tired of having to wait for investor money. And I thought, well, I just can improvise piano instantly to a spoken word and score instantly. So we went in the studio, and I want to play you. We have 50 of these things. This is the shortest of them all because it's perfect to sharing. But it's meant to be listened to by your higher self to yourself. So check this out. It's so tender, and I just love it. Hold on. Okay, here we go. Where are you? Here we go.
Do you know how beautiful you are? Have you ever stopped to look at yourself? To see yourself in your truth? In the clarity of who you are? in your magnificence. If only you could see what I can see. If only you could know what I know of you. You would stand before yourself in awe. You would see yourself you would feel yourself. You would know yourself. And so I invite you in this moment to see how beautiful you are, to see yourself in clarity, in simplicity, in your true nature. I invite you to see yourself. You are so beautiful.
Wow. Stunning, stunning.
You know what I have a reflection on what after just hearing this for the first time again in a while. I literally believe that the reason I feel that has healing capacity is because we were both completely improvising in the moment. And I was on a radical level listening to every word and utterance she was saying. And she was listening to it was like the essence of a collaborative, um, radical moment of intimacy being in spontaneous composition, spontaneous improvisation. And I think I know you know this because I know how this is how you do your teaching. Everything happens multidimensionally. And when you bring forth the energy of our capacity to be that radically present in the unknown and to be portals through that radical unknown, I think it has this healing power that is what people really receive rather than there are notes and there are words, but what's underneath it is a yes to life. Oh, Em, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I said so beautiful. I'm so touched by that. You know, it reminds me, one of my mentors, Hakim, who's passed on now, he was an Egyptian or Commission master, an awakened being.
What was the word you used? Condition?
Kemet, Commission. So,
Commission.
meaning that's the ancient term for Egypt, Kemet.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. And he shared with me that back then, many, many years ago, thousands of years ago, that sound technology was how they moved and cut all these huge things and lifted and such. And then he also shared with us the psycho-spiritual energetics of how they did that. And it was all
Wow.
sound is what he was claiming. And it blew me away. And he said something that really hit me. I said, how can people are so deluded by leadership that we see that's megalomaniac or narcissistic, and why is this happen? How do we know true from false and all this? And he says something and he stopped, he giggled and he smiled and he says, Satyen, truth has a sound.
Right. Well, this is
It's all in the sound of being. And that's what I feel when with your shares, your gift, it's more than just music for entertainment. it's evoking and calling the subtlety, the nuance, the all the subtle textures, and it wakes up all the places in our souls that are dormant or atrophied. And I can feel that in what you were sharing there.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I long ago, I tried to name my company not Wisdom of the World, but my original first name that I wanted was Innertainment, INNER, because that sums up everything I've been doing since I left Hollywood per se. And to me, this is the great destiny that music has to fulfill that we barely scratch the surface of. That is, now that I can hear this, a great return to the ancient ones. You know, this is what the first hour of Thrive 2 is about, is that all quantum field is about resonance, frequency, and vibration. It's all about that. And so another way to articulate what you just said is that the sound of truth is in complete resonance with the field, right? And when it resonates with the field, we know when we're hearing dishonesty, we can feel it in our bones, you know? And that's, and you could get quite specific. I often said that I look forward one day to have, I mean, I was always thinking the Templeton Foundation would be perfect for this because they've done a lot of evidence on the psychophysical effects of forgiveness and gratitude and how it affects the mind and the body and the heart. Because I believe that we're sitting on 100 years of the finest film composers tracking emotionally, eliciting emotionally, human emotional genome experience. You know, they're tracking the genome. But what if they tracked the nuance of human emotion? And it turns out that film scoring, when designed for this purpose, elicits the emotion that's like, imagine when Stalin and Rockefeller and Roosevelt were carving up Europe before they decided to carve it up from a hierarchical, you know, dictatorial place. They had each culture that was going to be decimated perform something that reflected their culture that had no reflection on the way the boundaries were written in when Europe was being carved. What would happen if they actually felt the thousands of years of culture that had been the Ukrainians that had been overwhelmed for thousands of years by the stronger warriors? You know, there's so many cultures like that. And I felt like if arts and music could do anything, wordlessly it could convey the soul of an individual, the soul of a culture, that would elicit a compassion that would change treaties. It would change lives. It would change direction. I never said that online, but I've always felt that it was the future. It is the future. The arts are a way to communicate that stuff.
Absolutely. Gary, I'm so moved by all that you share, your spirit, your heart. How do we get in touch with you, your websites, all of that? How can our Warrior Sages find out more about what you're up to now, what you're offering?
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity, Satyen. I so love, and I spent a week with you and your work, and it was life-changing. It was so powerful, and I can't wait to do it again. And I have just the utmost respect for you and your tribe. I decided to stop trying to sell on my website because there are about 1 million people in the world that have been profoundly moved by this work that I referenced called Graceful Passages. They've helped recontextualize death and as a part of the cycle of life for over 1 million people around the world. But I only have about 15 or 20,000 people on my database. So I decided, let's give people a direct experience of samples of my work. So if you sign up for Wisdom of the World and you join, I promise you won't be spammed, but you will get these 9 letters. Each one will have a gift: song medicine, alchemical wisdom medicine, film scoring medicine, grief supporting medicine, you know, and you'll get these gifts that'll help you understand that these could be catalysts for a spiritual practice that you might want to enhance or deepen or even start. So wisdomoftheworld.com would be my first request, is to consider joining, and you can always unsubscribe if it doesn't work for you, but that would be the greatest gift for me, is to help me build back my audience and my community, which is what I've been focusing on.
And that's wisdomoftheworld.com. I'll make sure that's in
wisdomoftheworld.com. That's my world. And I'm trying to create a community of people that recognize that our intellectual capacities alone are no longer enough to solve the problem. And we need the vibrational frequency, sculpted vibrations of intentional music to lubricate, assimilate, you know, transform. These are all the things we need now more than ever. So,
Gary, I'm so grateful for your heart passion, the magic you bring, you've expanded my understanding and my feeling in the dimension of music today. I know my whole day is going to unfold. Like, any last shares from your heart to us warrior sages?
I want to encourage any of those of you who are listening who are thought leaders, who are people that do guided meditation or lead people in meditation or into deepening themselves, to check out some of the things that we've done with spoken word. And I want to encourage you to find slow music in the background and practice the art of speaking from presence. Presence is like the fruit of the integration of body, heart, mind, and soul, right? So I just want to encourage you to play with the alchemy of how music could support the transmission of an even deeper experience than just spoken word alone is fabulous. It's not better or worse. But for those of you who are thought leaders, start playing with allowing music to multidimensionalize your offering in the work that you offer to people, because people are stuck in their neck up, and sometimes we need the the emulsifier, and that's a lot of my music. I'm shameless self-promotion. A lot of the work I'm selling and offering is being used for that purpose, to deepen people's messages. So yeah, I want to encourage people to experiment with what works for you in expanding the vibrational frequency of your offering to the world. And I think it's a genre whose time has come.
Absolutely. Gary, thank you so much. All my love and gratitude. I'm looking forward to having you in our Wisdom Keeper circle and share your wisdom there. And I'm looking forward for our joyful in-person encounter once again, brother.
I can't wait that. And thank you, Satyen, for the privilege and the honor of being in this conversation with you. It's been a joy. Thank you.
Thank you, warrior sages. Have a lovely day. Much love.
Oh.